a pot-based horror movie where the devil's lettuce might actually be the devil's lettuce, let's talk about trim season. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watch Your Pass, and I'm talking about Trim Season, which is coming to theaters and on demand on June 7th, 2024. It is a pop-based horror film that has a fantastic cast and a really interesting setup. My hot take is, I think you should watch it later. I liked how this movie started. It has a nice blend of like horror and kind of like pop culture in this interesting scenario that could quickly turn sinister, and it kind of does. But like I said, the story starts off well, but kind of goes up in smoke towards the end. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it had like a nice idea behind it. So I think you should watch it eventually. Just wait for it to come like streaming or on demand. So all that being said, I'm gonna tell you a little about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't know what happens in this movie, and you might not, there are some big surprises along the way. I would turn it off when I get there. Before that, though, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free. I'll let you know when I get to the spoilers. So in Trim Season, you have Emma, who is kind of down on her luck. She doesn't have a job. She needs rent money. And a chance encounter causes her to go up to Northern California to participate in Trim Season when people go up to pot farms to trim the plants and prepare the buds. It is a short season. It's apparently very lucrative. And so Emma needs this. And so she goes up there. But when she gets there, it doesn't really end up being what she was planning on to be. It actually is worse. So does she survive this Trim season? Well, you'll have to watch the movie to find out. So things I liked about this movie. The first, I love the setup. It's a great setup. Like you have this remote farm out in the middle of nowhere. There's no cell service. It's the perfect setup for a horror movie. And what do you know? When you know it, terrible things do start happening. It is a nice idea, and it's a nice kind of way to start a horror film. It's kind of the perfect setting for a horror movie. Second thing I love the practical effects. This movie has a great commitment to practical effects. They are bloody, they are gruesome. There's not a ton of practical effects, but when they have them, they are practical, which I love. I love that they didn't do CG. I love that they kind of stuck to the traditional gore, and it looks very good. And the last thing I love the characters. It's an interesting set of characters. Each of these characters is very different. It's kind of a not a misfit group, but kind of a misfit group that goes up to do this trim season. So you get to meet a bunch of different people that are doing this, and they all are very different. You don't have your like traditional, typical horror stereotypes. These feel like fleshed out people that feels like they all have very different motivations for being here, but they do kind of like form a nice crew that that Emma and her friend Jules interact with. So all that being said, things I didn't love about this movie. The first, it's not really that scary. Like it is a horror movie, it is an interesting setup, but it isn't really that scary. Part of that is because it has a very long build-up, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with. But there isn't a ton of scares there. And then when it does kind of like devolve more, it isn't so much scary. It's more like, I don't know, sinister or gory. So again, it would have been nice to have a few scares on the way. They do a few things to like unsettle you, but they're not that scary. They're just kind of more random. And the last thing I didn't love as much, I didn't really love the ending. It was fine, but it didn't seem to connect with what we were learning before. And so it did kind of come out of nowhere. It was a surprise. I think that may be what they were going for. But in terms of like, I don't know, the setup that we had before, it didn't really seem to match that. So again, I liked Trim Season. I thought it was nice. I thought it was kind of a refreshing horror pot. I thought it was a refreshing like horror pot combination. I think you should ultimately watch it later, wait for it to come to streaming, or watch it on demand if the price is right. But if you do check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I would love to hear it. Now I'm going to go into the ending right now. So if you don't know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So, like I said, Trim Season, you got Emma, who is hard on her luck. She has just lost her job. She is trying to make rent. She's way behind on her rent. She doesn't know what to do. And a chance night out with her friend Jules leads her to meet this person, James, who is, I guess, like a scout for pot growers. He carts people up to pot farms to do trim season. He mentioned that a couple of his trimmers had to bounce this season, so he's looking for some more, and he's wondering if Emma and Jules want to do it. They both say, sure, why not? Who doesn't want to make like $5,000 in 2 weeks? I want to make $5,000 in 2 weeks. Great, that sounds good. So they end up going up to meet James. Now, Emma is a little bit scared about this the entire time. I mean, I was like, yo, girl, like you are going to do this. You already agreed to. And when she gets there, he's like, hey, jump in the van. I'm going to take you up there. She's like, oh, like, why are we going in the van? What about our car? He's like, the roads are really bad. Like your cars aren't going to make it. It's like up in the mountains. And then she keeps asking these questions. I mean, I guess she's nervous. It's good to be nervous. But the other pot grower, the other like experienced trimmers seem to be pretty chill with it. So She eventually gets in the car and they drive up. Now, when they get to the plant, when they get to the farm, when they get to the pot, I don't know what they're called, pot farm, sure. Um, it is a little bit more sinister. There are guards there, and there's guards that like come down and check them. And again, this was where like the scary stuff, it felt like it was a little bit forced because James is known to them. James is the one who brings them their trimmers. These guards should know him. They come down, they know him, they check his stuff, and then they like hit the van a couple times with their guns. And like, why would you do that? Why would you scare these people? Just like have them go up. They're the trimmers. He's bringing you the trimmers. He knows them. Anyways, he gets up there, they unload, they get into their, living facilities, and they find out that there is going to be a dinner in an hour with the matriarch of this farm, the like owner of this farm, this person named Mona. So they go to get ready, and it's an interesting transition because they go to their places during the day. There's like sunlight out, and then it is pitch dark when they go to the dinner. I don't know what the California sunset's like, but it seems to be very fast. They head into the dinner. They meet Mona. Mona is this like, I don't know, like otherworldly, like old school looking debutante almost. She's in this like black gown. She's wearing gloves like Audrey Hepburn. She's got pearls. She feels like she's from a different time. She serves them dinner. So there's wine and weed. Everyone's having a good time. She introduces them to her sons. Her two sons are there, Christopher and Malcolm. Christopher seems to be a little bit more gruff. He has a shaved head, so you can tell he's probably a badass. All shaved head people are badasses. And Malcolm seems a little bit more sensitive. He has longer hair. He does have a mustache, so a little bit of sensitivity, a little bit of gruffness. It's fine. And so they all have dinner. They all drink. They have a good time. And eventually you see that Malcolm is kind of like becoming friends with this person, Dusty. Dusty is one of the trimmers that are there. They seem to have a trouble past. They seem to be kind of like a little bit on edge. And so that Dusty and Malcolm seem to be becoming friends. So the next day they receive their tutorial on trimming. They start trimming. They learn a little bit about each other, not a ton. We find out that Lex, one of the trimmers, doesn't feel pain because she's cutting the trim, like she's trimming. She's not paying attention. She just like cuts into her hand. And they're like, what is going on? She's like, oh, I just don't feel pain. Or she has a rare condition where she doesn't feel any pain. We also find out that Harriet kind of sucks. She is like super into pop culture. She's a fun character. She's like is super knowledgeable about pop. But then they're trimming in this room and there's all this newspaper up on the windows. And she just like goes and starts tearing it down. And they're like, yo, that's up there for a reason probably. And she's like, oh, but it looks better this way. Well, unfortunately, Mona comes in and she blames the newspaper thing on Emma. Emma has a history of like taking the blame for people and not sticking up for herself. And so it's happened at her last job. That's one of the reasons she got fired. And now here, Mona blames Emma, and Emma doesn't say anything. She should have said, yo, that was Harriet. I was here trimming. I was doing my job. But Mona, says, it's fine. Let's tear it all down. So Harriet goes and tears all of them down like a kid opening Christmas presents. And then Mona's like, isn't that better? Now tomorrow, Emma, you come meet me and we can redo all these windows. So it's kind of like like, it's fine. I'm cool, but you are going to fix it, Emma. So the next day, Emma goes to meet Mona to get the supplies to fix the windows, and Harry goes with her. She feels bad. She wants to help. And so she goes with her. They get there. Emma and Mona go down to the basement to get the supplies. Harriet stays upstairs. Now, Emma and Mona down in the basement, they get the supplies, and then Mona basically asks, like, why'd you take the blame for Harriet? And Emma's like, oh, it's something I do. I don't really speak up for myself. And Mona says something about how like she reminds her of Mona when she was younger. So you get a little bit of a rapport here. It's interesting that Mona knew and still like blamed Emma. You would think that she would just yell at Harriet. It's fine. Harriet upstairs though, she is snooping around. Again, she kind of sucks. She's snooping around. She finds Mona's secret supply. Earlier, Mona had been offered weed at that weed and wine dinner, and she said, "No, I have my own special blend that I smoke." Well, Harriet found it, and wouldn't you know it, Harriet decides to swipe one of them. So back at the newly newspapered up trimming room, everyone's trimming, and Harriet decides that now she's going to check it out. She's going to try this bud. It is like, I guess, tinted red, so it looks a little bit more ominous. She does whatever you do with, I guess she crushes it and then rolls it and then smokes it. And she takes a hit. It seems to hit her hard. She starts coughing a lot. And they're like, oh, it's fine. It's like really strong. And she keeps coughing. Like, hey, do you need some water? She keeps coughing. And eventually she like starts coughing up blood. Blood comes from her eyes. She starts convulsing and everyone understandably freaks out. She eventually seems to die. And then when she dies, like red smoke comes out. I was like, oh, that's not good. Like, everyone get out. Don't breathe that. You're all going to get pot Ebola. They don't. Mona comes in and yells at them. She said, like, maybe I should have been more specific when I said that that pot was specifically for me. She has her sons take Harriet's body away, and then she like becomes fairly cold. She had been pretty warm throughout this. Now she becomes kind of cold, and she's like, all right, girls, time to go to sleep. And they're like, we're gonna like Harriet just died. Like, how can we sleep? She's like, you're gonna have to sleep. Sorry. So after this incident, Emma seems to start having some sinister dreams. She seems to dream about a couple people we saw at the very start of the movie. These two people that were working in a pot place. We assume it's this farm, although we didn't know that specifically. And they seem to have killed themselves. It seemed like they were fighting it, but they eventually killed themselves. Emma has a dream about them, and then Emma also has dreams about, I think, the past and Mona. She had some like weird mixed visions. So it seems like Emma, maybe it was that red smoke. We're not sure, but something is affecting Emma now. And Dusty also has a scary incident. They get harassed in a shower. They're taking an outdoor shower, and presumably the same guards that like hit the car with their guns, like start banging on the shower, kind of just like scaring them. And Dusty's understandably freaked out about this, but that's it. That's the rest of the incident. So again, these are like little things to kind of keep you on edge. It seems odd that these guards would do that, but it's fine. So that night they have a big dinner with everyone that's remaining. And at that dinner, Mona forces Dusty to talk about what's bothering them. Dusty seemed a little bit upset after Harriet's death. I would be upset too if I saw a gruesome, bloody, horrible death. And Dusty relates that they found their father dead. Their father had committed suicide, found him in a pool of his own blood, and so that traumatized Dusty. And seeing Harriet in a pool of her own blood die kind of amplified, like triggered that, like it reminded them of that, caused them to not be happy. And so after relaying the story, Dusty leaves. Malcolm follows Dusty. Remember, they're friends. And when Malcolm gets out there, he tells Dusty that like he's planning to leave soon, and like they make plans to leave together. Now, while this is happening, Christopher eventually comes out, and Malcolm tells Dusty to run. Christopher is, remember, his like bigger brother. Malcolm's the more sensitive one. Christopher and Malcolm get in a fight. Dusty tries to run, but eventually we see Mona doing a ritual, and Mona does this ritual and causes Dusty to like involuntarily move. We'd seen this earlier at the very start. There were these two girls that I mentioned who killed themselves. They were like doing fine, and then their hands started like uncontrollably moving, and then they grabbed like knives and stabbed themselves. Well, that seemed to happen to Dusty. Dusty is now moving without being able to control themselves and moving somewhere. Christopher and Malcolm are fighting. Christopher hits Malcolm a bunch. The girls are all being held hostage by this person named Bobby. And so Dusty is like being controlled and going to this like secret tent, this like tent out in the wilderness. It is triangular. It is cool looking. It looks kind of like a tent in Midsummer. And who is there but Mona? Now, when Dusty gets there, Mona forces Dusty to essentially commit harikiri. Like they grab a knife, cut themselves, and like eviscerate themselves. And after this happens, Christopher shows up, and Mona tells Christopher to get her the vessel. And so Christopher reaches in and pulls out, I think, Dusty's uterus. Gives that to Mona. Mona puts the uterus in this like special pot plant that is in this tent. This pot plant is like clearly very special. It's like glowing red. It looks really cool. She puts the uterus in there, and the pot plant seems to start absorbing it. So this pot plant seems to have special properties, and it seems to maybe be the pot plant that Mona says is specific to her. So during this time, the girls are being held hostage by Bobby. The remaining girls, Lex, Emma, and Jules. Lex decides that she's going to fight back. She doesn't feel pain. So she goes up to the guard and like starts challenging him. And he's like, don't make me shoot you. Don't make me shoot you. She's like, you're not going to shoot me. And then eventually he like rifle butts her face. And so bloody face. But remember, Lex doesn't feel anything. So she's like, you can't hurt me. And then she goes and grabs this like metal fan and just whacks the guy in the head and then hits him when he's on the ground. So now they are free. Lex grabs the gun and they decide that they're going to go help Dusty. And I was like, yeah, you probably should run. Like, this doesn't seem like a good situation. You should just run. But they're like, no, we're not leaving Dusty behind. We're going to go help them. Now, Christopher and Mona are smoking, and I think maybe back in the house. And Mona tells Christopher to go fetch the others. Christopher doesn't know that the others are now free. The others kind of follow Dusty's screams and go in that general direction. They find the tent. But while they're there, kind of hiding, Malcolm comes up and sees Dusty's body and like collapses crying. Lex wants to like take him out, but Emma's like, no, no, like let's let's see if we can help him. Let's see if he can help us. So Emma goes and puts her hand on Malcolm's shoulder. She picks, kind of like helps Malcolm get up. Malcolm grabs an axe that's there and starts heading towards the house. Now, at this point, kind of all heck breaks loose. Christopher goes to check on the girl, sees that Bobby is on the floor, and Mona, I guess, he relays it somehow to Mona, and Mona goes like, "All right, girls, let's play." And she starts using her powers, full powers, and forces like Lex and Emma to fight, and also Jules to grab a stick and hit herself a bunch in the head like a club. Now Christopher hears this commotion, he's distracted, and Malcolm sneaks up with him and like hits him in the back with an axe. Now Emma then after like she fights with Lex a little bit, she starts strangling Jules, and she can't control herself. Remember, she's like under the spell, and so she's strangling Jules. Eventually, she like snaps her neck, and I was like, "What is going? Like, if they kill all these people, who's going to trim all their pot? Like, they probably need the pot, I assume. Who's going to trim it all? Maybe Chris and Malcolm will, but maybe they won't be around very much. Because Chris and Malcolm are fighting, and during the fight, Malcolm takes the axe and like hits Christopher in the neck. So Christopher is now up. There's been a lot of death in this little short period of time. Mona is pissed that Christopher is dead, and looks like maybe Malcolm is dead or at least very injured from the fight. And so Mona gets upset and starts gathering her power and makes Emma and Lex come to her. They're the two remaining trimmers. Now, when they get to see her, Mona starts talking about this special pot plant that she has. And she says that the control of this plant can only be earned with blood, force, and sacrifice. And I think the three components, Harriet bled out. So I think that's blood. Force was maybe when Emma broke Jules's neck, and sacrifice maybe was the uterus that was put in the pot plant. I think maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what causes the plant to grow. She says those are the components. She says that this pot plant has been in their family for generations, for centuries, and they carried it across the sea from the mountains of Carpathia. I think this is a reference to like Transylvania, like vampires in Transylvania, at least Eastern Europe, because I think the Carpathian Mountains are near where Wallachia is. So that's what I took it as. Like this plant was some sort of like remnant of like this plant is somehow related to like vampirism and things like that. That's why it needs blood. That's why it needs sacrifices. And that's why this plant has helped Mona live for so long. So Mona is controlling the girl. She like cuts her hand and some like smoke comes out. I guess maybe emitting some more power. And she's like making the girls feel pain. But remember, Lex can't feel pain. Now she's making the girls like feel pain. They're writhing in pain. And Mona says, "Let me tell you a secret, girls. Life is pain." And Lex goes, "Not for me, bitch." And she pushes Mona and then takes an axe and cuts off one of her hands. Boom. One of Mona's hands are gone. Mona uses her powers to push Lex away and force her to like stab herself. So she can't feel pain, but she definitely feels a knife going into her face. Emma then jumps on Mona. I don't know why she didn't do this earlier, but she does this then. She jumps on Mona and takes a shard of glass and like viciously chops off her other hand. It's a very gruesome scene. She's like chopping. Eventually gets the other hand off. So now Mona is handless. Now Emma goes to Lex and says thank you because Lex saved her life. And then Emma goes to see Jules down at the pot tree and she cries over her body. We see Mona with her stumps. We find out that Malcolm is still alive. She says, "Malcolm, help me, help me." And Malcolm's like, "Why couldn't you just let me go?" And then he just kind of like walks off. Looks like Mona was like using her powers to keep Malcolm there. And without her hands, doesn't seem like she has much power left. He can finally leave, and it seems like Mona dies. Like she kind of bleeds out. We see like the bloody rag over her hand is kind of like drop, and so I assume that she dies. Now it seems like when she dies, I guess Emma takes over. I think maybe because she's closest to the pot plant. Maybe because Mona said that they are similar. For some reason, it seems like Emma starts to get some powers because when Mona dies, the red light fades in the plant, in the tent, and now it's white. And we hear all over the radio one of the guards saying like, Bobby, what's an update? What's an update?" So Emma uses her powers to make that guard who was on the phone go and stab himself. So I guess that's maybe the sacrifice, maybe the force. I'm not sure which one it is. And we also see Bobby. Bobby wasn't dead. He got hit in the face with a metal fan, but he's still alive. And Emma starts using her powers to force Bobby to walk over to her. And when he gets there, she like forces him to kneel. She uses some powers to light some of the plant on fire and then turn it off. And so the plant burns and then turns off. That smoke fills the tent and it fills Bobby's lungs, and he starts coughing and bleeding. So after this blood sacrifice happens, we see Malcolm bringing Dusty's body over to the tent. And I think Dusty was already there, so I don't know why Dusty's body was taken, but maybe Malcolm is carrying Dusty's body away. We see Malcolm holding Dusty's body, looking at the tent. So I'm not sure if Malcolm is bringing Dusty's body to the tent and Emma's going to use some powers to revive Dusty, or if Malcolm is carrying Dusty's body away and he's going to like bury them or at least take them off of this farm. I'm not sure. He looks up. We see the tent. It is white. It has Emma in there. She clearly is full of her powers. I'm not sure what she's going to do. Maybe she's going to continue the farm. Maybe not. But that is the end of trim season. There is a stinger during the credits. During the credits, we see James recruiting some more people for trim season. And while he's doing the same thing, he's at a bar, he's going to like get them drunk and then have them agree. His hand starts moving involuntarily. And so it seems like Emma's using her powers to control James. I don't know how that works because I thought the powers were limited to the farm. Maybe Emma is very powerful. I'm not sure. But that is trim season. Like I said, I liked it. It had a lot of really good things going for it. I love the setting. I love the cast. I love the characters. But some of the like story elements didn't really match up. Like, for one, what was the sacrifice? She should have taken one of Mona's hands and put that in the pot plant. That would have been a sacrifice. That would have been a good sacrifice. Take Mona's uterus. I don't know. If that's what you need to do, take Mona's uterus. She was already dead. Emma should have done that and used that for the pot plant. That would have been the three. That would have been a sacrifice, a force, and a blood. That would have continued the story. I don't know. Also, the death at the start, I don't think it was similar enough. Maybe it was. There were two people that killed themselves, and I was wondering if like it seems like they just stabbed themselves. It would have been interesting if like one of them stabbed themselves in the same way Dusty did to like expose their uterus for the ritual. Again, it was a nice start. It just didn't feel like it was consistent with like the ritual that Mona says they need to do to have the pot plants. And also, why didn't she wait till the end of trim season? I guess maybe Harriet forced the issue when Harriet stole her weed, but now there's going to be all this weed that doesn't get trimmed. I mean, what are you going to do? Is it going to get thrown away? Maybe Emma is going to trim the pot. Who knows? Maybe they'll get more trimmers and Emma will turn it into a nice place. I'm not sure, but that is trim season. Like I said, it comes to theaters and on demand on June 7th, 2024. I think you should watch it later, wait for it to come to streaming, or if the price is right on demand, check it out. But if you do check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I would love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.